So, hello, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who is watching this live broadcast of our yet another episode, My Life in Switzerland. I, Ayush Agarwal, a PhD student at EPFL, welcome you all. In this episode, we will be talking about the life and journey of a PhD student in Switzerland. And today we have a wide variety of panelists with us. I'll quickly start off with the introduction without any further ado. So, introducing our panelists, first of all, we have Shakti, who is doing her PhD in photonics at EPFL. Hello. Up next, we have Rasool Ahmed, who recently finished his PhD in mechanics from EPFL. Then we have Pranit, who is a PhD student of chemistry and chemical engineering at EPFL. And last but not the least, we have Nazimo Islam, who is doing his PhD in geosciences at UNIL, University of Lausanne. Along with the panelists, I have a bright and dynamic set of people who helped me organize this session. And I would like to introduce them as well right at the beginning, because most of them are also PhD students and they can be helping us answer our questions as and when they come during the sessions. So with us, we have Mukesh Chand Thakur, who is doing his PhD in microelectronics, and he also happens to be the president of YUVA in Indians. Then we have Arvind Iyer, who is a PhD student at UNIL, doing his PhD in quantitative biology. Then we have Vishwa, who happens to be the backbone of our organization, because he's the one who answers all your questions when you contact our help desk. So starting off with this session, I'll give you a brief introduction of what the session will include and what the session will not include. So in this session, we will be talking about life of PhD student in general, like how did they apply and why did they apply, and a very brief touch upon the application processes and how is it like working in the lab and how is their experience in general. What we will not be covering in this session is the cost of living or like living in general, because we have covered it in our previous episodes. But nevertheless, we will be covering in our next episode on how to arrive here, like things to pack. So I'll be starting off with Shakti. So Shakti, can you please tell us a bit more about yourself, where you're from, or like where did you do your bachelor's and what you're exactly working on now?
Hi Ayush, hi everyone, very good to see you all. I'm Shakti, I come from Tamil Nadu, and I did my bachelor's at IIT Madras. I did my bachelor's in engineering physics. So here I am doing my PhD in photonics. It's my second year now. So I work in the laboratory of quantum nano-optics with Professor Christophe Delon. So that's briefly about me.
Amazing. So, what made you choose EPFL?
Yes, so you need to consider too many things when you apply for your PhD. So for me, initial drive was EPFL was one of the top universities in photonics, which I was interested in. And but when you make your choices, there are so many other things. You will have to look at the supervisor. You need to look at the project you get. You need to look at the funding. You need to also look at the place where you're going to live. So for me, it's all perfect at EPFL.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll come back to you later during this session. Moving on to Rasool. So Rasool, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to now that you have recently completed your PhD.
Yeah, okay. So I am from Uttar Pradesh in India, and I did my bachelor and master from IIT Kanpur in mechanical engineering. So here I joined EPFL in 2016, and here my main focus was like understanding the deformation mechanism of magnesium and effect of alloys at the domestic level. So my whole PhD thesis was mainly revolving around the computation that I did, and I uh, making the theory about understanding the deformation, or how can we increase the, how can we enhance the properties, and how can we make the materials that are suitable for some other industrial applications. That was my whole thesis, and mainly I was just focused on the computational part. And yeah, so I just finished my PhD, I think in October. And as for the application part, so for me, the highest priority was advisor, because in PhD, that's advisor is your contact point, right? I mean, he's the most important guy, because you are going to interact him for the, I think, at least the 4 years, and after that he will decide. I mean, the advisor will decide everything. So for me, the advisor was the most important thing, and he is really nice, and he turned out to be a really nice guy, and he was a leader in his field. So that was my main motivation for applying at EPFL. And as you know, the EPFL in Switzerland, so the living conditions and the environment is really good, and you have a lot of resources for doing your research, a lot of computing powers, as much computing power as you need. So it all turned out to be for good. Okay.
Awesome. Good to hear that. Thank you so much. Moving on to Pranit. So, Pranit, same question for you. Please tell us about yourself.
So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Pranit. I did my bachelor's and master's from IIT Bombay, and then I came to EPFL for an internship after my dual degree in 2016. And my plan was to apply to the US for a PhD, but when I came here for the internship, I just liked it here. So, and for my field, which is electrocatalysis, to try and study the conversion of carbon dioxide to fuels, the facilities and the groups here are actually quite nice, and I was happy with what I thought I could do here. So yeah, then I decided to stay in Switzerland for a PhD, and yeah, that's it.
Wow. I mean, we had collected few questions from our viewers already when they were registering for the session, and this key question that I could see coming again and again was the difference between applying for PhD in US and in Europe and Switzerland. So we will get back to you on this later during the session. Thank you so much. And last but not the least, Nazimo Islam. Please, Nazimo, introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and tell us more about your project.
Yeah, hi, and thank you so much, Ayush, for and Mukesh for inviting me to share my experience here. So I have a long journey, like academic journey so far. So I did my undergrad from Alia University in Kolkata, and then I moved to Delhi. I completed my first master's MSc in geography, followed by a PG diploma in GIS from Jamia Millia Islamia in New Delhi, and then I moved to UK, particularly Leeds. So I did my second master's in a specialized subject there from the University of Leeds, and then I again went back to India. I worked in IIT Kharagpur like as a junior research fellow for more than like 18 months. And then I moved to Switzerland recently last year for doing my PhD. And my project is about like environmental, how climate change is impacting on glaciers and mountains, particularly in the Himalaya, my area of focus. And as we all know, like we have a lot of natural hazards in the Himalayas. Recently, we had one in Chamoli district. So my study is related to these things. And I am from a small city in West Bengal called Kuch Bihar. So yeah, that's kind of a journey for me so far.
Amazing. That's quite inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, moving on with the discussion, let's start right from the beginning, like the application, and then we'll move on to the other stuff. So, continuing with you, Nazimul, what according to you is most important while applying for a PhD? Is it your grades, or is it your letter, or like your past projects? What is it according to you that gets you in?
Yeah, I think according to me, like the most important thing is your dedication and passion. You know, like PhD is like a long time commitment, minimum like 4 years or maximum goes like 5 or 6. So if you are not passionate enough to spend like 4 or 5 years doing the same things, then it's a key part for me. And then apart from your motivation and like commitment, I think the projects you want to work on, either it's an individual projects or a group projects by your group. So that should be related to your keen interest, like in which you want to work really for your PhD. So yeah, apart from this thing, these two things, like supervisor would be another key part for your entire projects.
Okay. Thank you so much. Moving on to Pranit now. So Pranit, according to you, what is the most important thing that an applicant should keep in mind while applying for the PhD? Like, what do you think gets you in EPFL?
So yeah, while I can answer this, I think we should be aware that it's been 4.5 years since I applied, so things can change. But as far as I am aware, that if you are from the IITs in India, I think it's easier to get into EPFL and ETH. Most other friends who I know who are from India and are doing their PhDs here, they have done a master's at some university in Europe. And that is kind of a stepping stone to a PhD position at EPFL or ETH. So of course I could be wrong, but this is the majority of the cases that I know. Apart from that, I've learned recently from PhD interviews that I've participated in for our lab that EPFL has their grade criteria kind of stringent, at least as far as my doctoral program is concerned. And of course, I expect the others to be as much or even more competitive. But yeah, one nice thing to apply is that it doesn't cost to apply to EPFL or ETH. And it's kind of annoying that you have to shell out $100 for each application in the US. That is a positive. Yeah, the only other downside I see here is that sometimes you don't get to take time to choose your project here, and it gets handed to you in some cases. Whereas I'm aware that in the US, you get to spend a year doing rotations and things like that, and trying to experiment a bit. So yeah, as far as getting in is concerned, back to your question, I think yeah, decent grades and yeah, I mean, having a decent master's thesis, I would guess, could be of good help. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going on with the same question to Rasool now.
Yeah, so it has been like 5 years since I applied. So yeah, things might have changed a little bit. But in my experience, like from the practical point of view, if you are applying for a PhD, the first thing you should be careful about that your research interest should match with the laboratory in which you are applying. And if you can find that lab, that is great. And from the application point of view, for me, I think it was the letter of recommendation that you got from your past supervisor. That was the key part in getting your application accepted. And everyone else has touched upon some basic things. So I think that that's it for me. I think that, yeah. And you like, if you have a very solid background in if you can show that you have solid background in some research area, that will be a huge that will contribute hugely in your application, that at least you know some part of your research very well. And that's how, even if I remember my PhD interviews, so my supervisor was mainly concerned with like, do I know what I have done or not? Like just I have done something and I don't know about it. So he really went into the very deep questions, like, okay, he knows something that he has done. He is not like that. He doesn't know, and just he has done some project. Yeah, so that was a key part for my application.
Wow, that was a really good input, I would say. Know what you did. So yeah. Thank you so much. And finally, coming back to Shakti. So what do you think got you in, or like what is the most important thing that one should keep in mind while applying for a PhD position in Switzerland in general?
Yeah, so I think firstly, I don't know if this is how it works for all the departments, but when I applied, it's mainly that first you have this two kind of application process. So first you apply for the program. In my case, I have to apply for the photonics program. And then once you get admitted to the photonics school, and then you have to find your supervisor and the project. So so first thing to get into the application, I think of course you need to, I think the main key point would be that you should have good research experience for the field you apply. So it's very important for you to list out all the projects you could have done and also try to relate it in any way possible to the field you apply. So once you get in there, after that, it's up to the supervisor, and to mainly find the supervisor, again, it comes to the project that is relevant to the group. I think it plays a very crucial role. So for example, when you try to find your supervisor, you need to check their profile, you need to look for the opening because it's usually mentioned in their website. So you need to find the supervisor who is looking for opening in the field of your interest. And if you approach them with the same, same project, if you're interested in that and you have relevant experience in that, then it's very easy for you to get in, I think. And I must also say, it's some of you might be applying after your bachelor's, which is the case when you try to apply for US. Most of the people apply after their bachelor's. So I must also say that EPFL also accepts bachelor students for PhD if you have good research experiences. So I think that's the key point. And yeah, and this is also something which PhD aspirants do. They try to mail professors with their research experiences and ask for, see if you have opportunities. But keep in mind, don't spam them. So you have to like really keep it brief, because I hear it from my professor and so many professors. I also get some mails sometimes. So you have to be precise, and you should say, in short, what is your research experience? What is the position you are looking for? And any other elaborate information should be put in a resume, and you should attach them. And don't send it to random professors. Take time to look at their website and look for all the, at least read through the top recent publications. You don't have to read completely. You can just briefly look at them, look at their website for openings, and then you can approach them. Then your chances are very high, I would say.
Wow, with that elaborate and to the point answer, I think we can end the session right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
But
so,
I wish someone told me that, because this is always the confusion we have when we apply. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, this was one of the other key themes that I could see in the questions that some of our viewers have asked us. That yeah, so thank you so much for touching upon that in a great detail and giving out some really good tips and advice for the same. For our viewers, I can tell you some quick facts about PhD program at EPFL. So there are in total 21 doctoral programs at EPFL with over 2,200 doctoral candidates. And there are people from over 65 countries, and male to female ratio here is still not as high as we would want it to be. It's like around 1/3 of the PhD students are female here at EPFL. So as you can see that it's a quite multinational and cosmopolitan environment at EPFL. So with that, and having touched upon what gets you in, let us start discussing about what's the best thing about working at EPFL. I mean, what are the opportunity for doing interdisciplinary work, or opportunity to collab, or going for an internship, or what is it that you feel is the best part about working in Switzerland? So shall we start with Shakti again? Okay, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So for me, the best part is, first of all, of course, I have a very good laboratory to work with. Here, in my lab, first thing, you have enough funds. So it's really awesome that you can do whatever you want. No, of course, not whatever you want, but something relevant, of course. But it's nice that you have the freedom and you have the funds for you to do the research you wish to do. And of course, it depends on the supervisor as well. Other than that, I would say this place is beautiful for you to come to work every day. And also, everywhere here is beautiful. What else? I would say people are nice, of course, and also you get a good collaboration in many cases. So, for example, in my project, we are doing a project in collaboration with IBM at Zurich, and I think you get such opportunities quite often here because there is ETH and other places around. So it's really a good place for you to do research, I'd say.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Rasool. Same question for you.
Yeah, so I think the best part, as Shakti has said, that we have a lot of resources here. So for me is that I was mainly, my project mainly involved computation. So I need a huge computational resources. So I did not need to worry about do I need to downscale my simulations or what, but I can do any type of simulation I wanted here. So that was a really positive thing. Another thing is like you don't need to worry about your funds. Like if you want to go to conference, then that is fine. I mean, you can go to 4 or 5 conferences a year if you want. So that was not a limitation here. And another thing like that, but that depends on advisor, is that I had independence in deciding the timeline and in so we have a very broad view about the project that's what we want to achieve. But really, I mean, I was I was free to decide when I want to finish some part or not. So, but that depends. I think that depends on advisor to advisor and how if he trusts you enough or not. Yeah, and so here, I mean, so I also collaborated a lot with other people. So because my project was in computations, so but we wanted to test our theories with the experiments. So we had people at RWTH, Aachen, and other Max Plancks to perform some experiments and provide the result. So that was really nice because yeah, if people know your advisor, then collaboration is easy and they can get you collaboration. Yeah. So and apart from that, yeah, Switzerland is a nice place to live and it is a plus point. So this is a really nice place.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Praneeth, like what do you think is the best part about working here? Like what is one thing that you were like, wow, that blew up your mind for working here? You're on mute, Praneeth.
Okay, thanks, Tariq. Yeah, so if you start with the assumption that yeah, the facilities are world class here, and I'll just talk about what might be different from other places where facilities are already amazing. For me, it's mostly the outdoors actually here. So of course, many places are very beautiful, but the difference is that here is just super accessible in Switzerland. It doesn't take too long to reach really cool places. And for me, that like as far as exploring a new place goes, the inertia is really low here. Yeah, and that's mostly the difference. But if you talk about EPFL in itself, for my field, like the two answers before from Shakti and Rasool, we are kind of spoiled for resources here. Because, for example, I need a lot of microscopy time for my research. And then we have one here right here in the building where I just go down whenever I need it. And this doesn't happen everywhere. So yeah, I feel fortunate for that. And yeah, so to summarize, it's basically the facility, the activities you can get.
Thank you so much.
And of course, not to miss one point, the pay is good. I mean, we might pretend it's not such an important thing, but it is.
Yeah, I was actually gonna pause and say this because nobody was mentioning this. I was like, come on, guys, mention we are getting good salary also.
Yeah. There's no need to be that polite. We must accept that the stipend is really nice here.
Okay. So for people who are wondering what the stipend is, these are public information, and I would suggest that you can go on the website and have a look for yourself. So moving on to Nazimul. So Nazimul, what according to you is the best part of working here, and tell us something more about UNIL.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with others, like in terms of funding, like my experience when I joined here for the very first day, my guide just told me like, Naz, don't worry about the funding. We have enough funding. So whatever data you need, because like in geoscience or earth science, we need to purchase, a lot of satellite data, which are like very expensive. So he just assured me like, if you need this kind of data, then don't worry about the funding. We have enough funding. So that's one thing. And in terms of like working life here in University of Lausanne, I guess, as I mentioned, like most of the PhDs are of two types. One is like individual PhD. For in case of me, like I am as a individual PhD student, like I'm working on my own project. And at the same time, we have a structured PhDs, like which is also same with PhD structure in India, like some funding agencies like in India, we have Department of Science and Technology or DST. They funds like, they provide funding to the institute for group collaborations, research. Here, this case is also same. And in terms of like geoscience research, we have the key funding body here in Switzerland is called SNSF, Swiss National Science Foundation. So they provide funding. So once you join as a project, like as a funded projects, or as an advertised project, you are hired by the university as an employee. So in that case, you have some sort of rules you need to follow, like you need to work certain amount of time. But as an individual researchers, you don't have any restrictions or any kind of that rules you need to follow. So in that case, you are quite flexible to use your time as the way you want. Like either you can work the whole week, or maybe you can work in the weekend. So I feel this is kind of a very flexible for both the individual researchers as well as working in a group.
Thank you so much for this elaborate answer. And I would like to mention as a fun fact that, especially in Switzerland, if you are a PhD student, you are both a student and an employee. So if I tell you something about myself, although I am enrolled at EPFL as a PhD student, I work at Paul Scherrer Institute, which is in the northern part of Switzerland. So in Switzerland, there are several research institutes where you can work as an employee and then be enrolled at any of the Swiss universities as a PhD student. So in those cases, as Naz mentioned, that those are mainly funded projects where you get to know what the project is, who you are going to work with, and what is the timeline and deliverable right at the time of application. So it's more like you're applying for a job rather than a PhD. And then once the research institute accepts you, then you start with the process of applying to Swiss universities for your PhD as a student. So this is another good thing about working here. So it's like quite flexible, and yes, resources are plenty, and you can work on many things.
Yeah, and just want to add one more thing in regards to this, like if you join, and like if anyone wants to join as an individual project PhD student in any of these universities, and if someone gets a scholarship from the canton or the government, like for me, I have received the Swiss government excellence scholarship, right? So they are providing the health insurance, so I don't need to provide, I don't need to pay the health insurance. So this is a good site for getting a government scholarship to do a PhD here.
That's amazing. This was another question that was quite common among our viewers, that how to find funded positions, and I think Naz, you have covered it quite well. And moving on to the next part, like now that we have talked about why you wanted to do a PhD, what got you in, and what is the best part. So apart from your studies, what are the other uh, academic or non-academic benefits that you can say that you have as a PhD student here in Switzerland that you would not have expected anywhere else? So we can start a bit more randomly this time. So Pranit, what do you have to say on this? You're on mute again.
Mute again. Okay, sorry. Yeah. My bad. So, as far as skills that you pick up during a PhD are concerned, of course, you do pick up a lot of specialized skills, which may or may not be useful depending on what you do later. But what I think I will carry from this PhD for myself is how to persist while being stuck. I think everyone can agree on that. You will find how to get out of situations where you have been stuck for weeks or months. That is as far as, let's say, a psychological skill is concerned. But as far as a practical, let's say, a practical stamp or pedigree of that kind is concerned, I recently got to know that if you want to apply for a job or you want to get a job in Switzerland, if you have a degree from a Swiss university, it becomes a lot easier for employers to hire you. Otherwise, they have to justify to the commune or the canton that they couldn't find anyone else of that qualification. But if your degree brings a certain economic or scientific value here, it becomes easier for them to hire you. So a PhD is quite advantageous from that point of view if you want to explore living in Switzerland. And apart from that, yeah, if like I think Naz had mentioned, if you kind of put some thought into what you want to do your PhD in, then if you're fortunate, you can get a topic that is of personal concern to you or personal interest. From that point of view, you do get time to spend with a topic that is of really large interest to you, and then that it's easier to do a PhD in that case. If because then going to work every day becomes easier. If you don't like your topic or if you think it's not important, things become harder. But yeah, you get time to spend in something that you think is important.
Wow, that was put up really well by you. Thank you so much. Moving on with the same question to Rasul. What do you have to say on this? Like, what's the, I mean, I won't say advantage, or like, what is one thing that you love here and one skill that you picked up, and how is it going to help you in your future career?
I think the most important thing that PhD teaches you is that how to tackle some new problem in any way you want, right? You have freedom to choose problems, the problems that you think is important to you. Maybe not so in PhD, because in PhD, when you join a PhD, generally like you are adjusted in a predefined problems. But after your PhD, during the PhD, you know that you can just really think about, okay, this is the way I want to take my PhD in this direction or in this direction. So that PhD gives you a really good flexibility about choosing the direction of the research, because when you start a research project, you don't know what results you are going to get and in which direction you are going to go, right? That's the good thing about it. There's a thrill about research, that it is not really well defined. So yeah, I mean, even in my case, I just started with some project. We had something in mind, okay, we want to do that, but in the end we started getting another result, and some new exciting fronts opened, and we went into that direction. So this is also uncertainty, but that is, I think, it is also really exciting thing about PhD or research in general. That and also so the most important skill is that, as Brian said, that we learn to persist and we learn to persevere. And I also and I think that my master advisor once said that if you want to do a research, you have to be like a hyena. You need to clutch on someone and don't let it go until you have solved it. So that really stuck with me like for 6 years. So I really think that if you want to do a research, you really need to persist and you learn to persist. So that's
Wow.
a
I mean, today even I'm learning quite a lot of wise words from our panelists. I'm really happy that all of you agreed to be with us today. So moving on with the same question to Shakti. What's your say on this?
Yeah, Yeah, I agree with Ahmed. So first thing, you need to be very determined to do your PhD because yeah, you're working on a problem which not many has solved, and you're not going to get what you expect. So you don't have. So the main thing is you should never give up. So you have to be consistent in your efforts. So you cannot, you know, like feel bad things are not working, or feel so good that everything is working. So it depends on your project. But the thing is, with PhD, things are not well defined for you. So you have to have the patience, and you should continue giving your efforts. But one thing which is nice is that every day is new for you. I would say, like every day you have come up with new problems. So that's what makes a PhD life interesting. So as long as you have the passion, as long as you love what you're doing, I think you're going to be good at your PhD. So I think that's what is important.
Thank you so much, Shakti.
Yeah.
So, and last but not the least, Naz, please share us your wise thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like doing a PhD, particularly in UNIL in Switzerland, is like even if you work on your own project, like you are not alone. You are working within a group, and your guide is always here to help you, and your colleagues also. Like, and I mean, yeah, I'm also agree that PhD it's like it's doing research. There is something already someone has published or someone has identified. You just need to go through these problems and to look that problem in a different way. So that is called like research. So even you don't know what gonna be the outcome, so that would be a challenge for you. And if you feel like, oh, I cannot I can't reach to the ultimate goal and I should give up, so that's not a good sign for the PhD student. So you will have a lot of challenges, difficulties, and once you overcome all these things, you will get a PhD degree, right? So again, I'm completely agree that you need to be very passionate about your research. You need to be very dedicated towards your work, what you do every day. Like same thing you need to do from the morning till afternoon every day for next 3 or 4 years. And apart from that, doing PhD, particularly in Switzerland, is an advantage is like during your PhD, you have an option to go for doc mobility. Means like you go to a different country to spend 6 months or a year, and then come back and finish your PhD here. And even after your PhD, if you want to continue with postdoc, like as a postdoc researcher, Swiss government provides funding as like a postdoc mobility funding, so you can use that scheme to do your postdoc in somewhere else in any other countries. And then again, if you want to come back to Switzerland, you can. So these are the things like which really attract me to come here to do my PhD.
Wow, that's really good to know. Fun fact before we move towards the end of our session that UNIL has one Nobel laureate as of today, whereas EPFL does not have a single one yet. So that's another fun fact. So
Who knows? Maybe the first Nobel laureate would be among any of you.
we all hope so. So moving on towards the end of the panel discussion, I would like to ask each one of you to share your final parting thoughts. Like it can be anything. Like if you want to give people who want to apply some tips to keep in mind, or it can be like what is one thing that you learned here, or anything that you would like to share with our viewers. It can be anything. And since I know that Pranit has to leave, we can start with Pranit once again. So,
This time I did take the mute off. Yeah.
yes.
Nothing in particular. I think we've covered.
Mhm.
Your questions were they spanned the spectrum of concerns. But yeah, here basically in the end it can be quite a nice place to do a PhD in. But I would encourage people to assess how much they are ready to struggle to find an employment right after the PhD. Though it is frankly it is more challenging than somewhere like the US, just because of the size and scale of the economy there. I think there are more opportunities. But if you like it here, I think the struggle is worth it.
Thank you so much. And
I'll
thank you so
quickly.
much for joining us. And
Okay.
the rest of our participants will be, rest of our panelists will stay back with us for the Q&A. So thank you so
Okay.
much, Pranit. It was a
Cool. Thank
pleasure
you.
talking to you.
Thanks. See you.
See you. Moving on to Rasul. Please tell us like anything that you would like to share with our viewers.
Yeah, so from taking so much suggestion, that one thing that I can say is, if like if you are taking too much suggestion, then different people will give you different suggestions, and even you can get a contradictory suggestions even from the same lab, and that happened to me. So but I would say that I mean, but don't, I would not say that do not take suggestions or do not talk to people. Talk to as many people as you can, gather as much data as you can, but in the end you have to make your own decision by yourself.
Wow.
Like you cannot just say, okay, this guy said that, so I'm going to do that. And that can be really hurtful, because everyone is different and everyone has different is psychological and had different philosophy. So yeah, so it may happen to different people. So that's what I say, that gather as much data as you can, but in the end make your decision by your own.
Wow.
That's the suggestion from me.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was quite practical advice, I would say. Moving on to Naz. Uh, what do you have to say about, what are your final parting thoughts?
Yeah, my advice would be like, yeah, since I guess that most of the participants who have joined today, like they have already set their mind to apply for a PhD, particularly in Switzerland, right? So since you have already decided, so next step would be like to find the supervisor, like who is really has an expertise on your field to supervise you, to guide you, and don't just randomly send the request email to every professors from the same institute or from to the same university, because they are colleagues. So they, if you send an email to two professors and they are colleagues, so they will discuss each other about your application or request. So you just choose like the most relevant supervisor and talk to them in a, like in an introductory way, just this is your background, this is your research interest, and your supervisor's expertise is really related to your what you want to do, and whether he or she can supervise you. And this is one advice. And another advice would be like, once you do these steps, then look for scholarships. For example, like from my own experience, I can say when I started conversation with my supervisor, I didn't know about the scholarship which I am currently getting. So once we have completed the discussion, then my guide told me about this Swiss government excellence scholarship, which like Indian students are eligible to apply. So he just said, why don't you apply for that scholarship? And then I got to know about the scholarships, and then I applied, and luckily I got it. So second one would be like, look for scholarships. And yeah, and then talk to your previous academic tutor for giving a good reference. And most importantly, start all these processes at least like 1 year before you actually get into the PhD, because it's a long way journey, and it takes like 1 or 1.5 years to complete all the processes. So do all these things, and all the best for your PhD.
Thank you so much, Naz. Those were really practical tips, and I can relate to them during my own PhD applications. I mean, I started applying for my PhD in March of 2019, and then I was only able to get my first interview in October, and I finally started my position in February 2020. So yes, it can take almost a year for this process. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and just one more thing in terms of interview, since you mentioned about the interview, so be ready to face two questions in all of your PhD interview is like, why do you want to join these projects or this PhD, and how, I mean, how your skills are fit to that project. So be prepared to answer these two questions.
Thank you so much. I can second that as well. I mean, yes, these are the two questions that you can say that yes, you are definitely going to face them. So thank you so much. And moving on to Shakti, last but not the least, uh, please tell us your parting thoughts.
Yes, so I would say Yeah, just take your time. So I know it takes a lot of work to get in. So please take your time, look at all the websites. You literally have to click on each professor's page and then look at the research. So maintain some kind of reference. So try to shortlist the universities you want to go, the professors you want to go or go work with, and the projects you would like. And also make sure you have a good SOP and your letter of recommendation. So try to talk to your seniors or people who can help you get it reviewed, because there are always some mistakes which we don't notice when we do it ourselves. And other thing I wanted to say was, during your interviews, it's not just a place for you, for the supervisor to evaluate you. It's also the place for you to evaluate the supervisor. So you will also know that when you talk to them, are they pretty good, or are they very strict, and what is their attitude and motivation. So these are also the things you need to know, and be free to have questions when you have an interview. So I would say it's really, really crucial. I cannot emphasize more. It's important that you have a very good supervisor. So that's what decides your PhD life. So, and also one confusions people might have is, should I go for a professor who is very elderly, or who is very young, or should I, how do I choose your supervisor? So I would say it depends on what you want. So if you go to a very elderly professor, he's going to be very busy. He might not have time for you. But of course, you will end up making a good publications because you will have a lot of work to do. It's more systematic and things like that happens. But when you go to a younger professor, he will have a lot of time for you, and he's also, struggling to achieve a place in his field. So, but that's also a journey which is nice. Yeah, you cannot be so ambitious to make so many publications and things like that. So either way, you're going to be good. So don't worry too much. Decide what you want. That's what I would say.
Wow.
And all the best.
Thank you so much, Shakti. And to add to this, I would like to say something that my professor told me after I was hired was that remember that as much as you need a professor to do your PhD, a professor needs you for completing his or her research. So this is something that you should keep in mind, that you are hired for a reason, and you're hired because you're good. So with that, we come to an end to our panel discussion, and now I open the floor to the questions from our panelists, from our audience who are attending live in this session. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or in the beginning, you can just unmute yourself and ask your questions. Does anyone have any burning question that they want to ask, or?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Neelu.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself, and then you can ask your question to either one of the panelists, or you can make it open for anyone.
Okay, sure. So I'm currently pursuing masters at IIT Kanpur in computer science department, and I have been offered a PhD position at EPFL. So like that is why I was attending this. So like my question would be, thank you. My question would be like any advice on how to maintain a work and personal life balance during your PhD? And like it's open to anyone who would like to put in their thoughts.
That's a very tricky and I would say difficult question. But
like first, what?
No, jokes apart. I mean,
I can take that.
Yeah.
It
please.
just reminded me of the meme when I was laughing.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so the one good thing about doing PhD in Switzerland, I can say, is about maintaining your personal and professional life. That unlike I've seen in, at least in Mumbai where I was working before, that PhD students used to also be working during weekends. And here officially we have holidays on Saturdays and Sundays. So those 2 days are, you're not supposed to work. There are some exceptions that based on the type of work, we sometimes go or we are occupied somewhere else, but it's possible that you are working on weekends, but not always. I would say Saturdays and Sundays are for you to remove the burnout phase, whatever you had during the week, all those things. And also the timing of the work is like kind of regulated. So you don't waste a lot of time here and there. You're very structured with the plan, and then whatever professional time you are supposed to work, you work during that time. And in the evening, it's time to go home. It's time to go home. That's more or less the kind of a generic story. Of course, it doesn't apply to all of the students, but this is what is expected of you, that there are a certain number of hours in your contract, and that is the what you are supposed to follow.
Actually, I just wanted to add something over here was just that the concept of PhD is a job in Switzerland. So to be technically frank, they don't consider you as a student working under a supervisor. You are actually a contracted employee. So you basically have all the rights and regulations you have to follow, which is laid down by the Swiss government. So like it doesn't happen, but sometimes it might be happening that you're working on a weekend and maybe a watchman or the security guard can come and tell you have to go home. So that could also happen because it's quite regulated over here. Also, I wanted to add about work and life balance is a personal choice, but what I've observed in Switzerland is this, that at least your advisors make sure that at the time of work, which is generally Monday to Fridays, you're basically focusedly working in your 8 to 5 or 8 to 7, whatever your timing you follow on the work, and they make sure that you take Saturday, Sundays and off. So that's something which people over here make sure. So that's how you would try to maintain your work and life balance.
I would also like to say something. Sorry.
Sure.
So that I think it's also a point that in PhD you will always have work every time. There is no period where you're free. So there'll be a lot of work in your mind, but so it's you have to discipline yourself. So you have to decide, okay, this is the time of break for me, and I don't want to compromise. So that is something you have to practice, I think.
But yeah, I think that I would add that sometimes you become so engrossed with the research problem that you eat, sleep, and walk with it. I mean, I think that is fine, and that's what I liked about research, that it becomes your life, and you don't want to be separated with that problem. So it was really nice for me, and I was one of those guys that work on weekends. So but I like that. So and I can remember the phases during my PhD where I worked like straight 24 or 26 hours a day, because I did not want, because I was excited about getting some results, and I just could not leave the problem, and I could not go home and just sleep because yeah, I was really excited. So I think that is a good thing about research, that after a point of time you don't care about social life. Your research is your social life. And yeah. But it is my experience, so it is not general experience. So but yeah.
Neelu, Rasul is also from IIT Kanpur.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
just to, so Naz, do you want to
Yeah,
add something?
just to add with all of them is like making balance between your research life and personal life at this stage is very difficult. It's not just in Switzerland, but in anywhere in the world. So but doing research, particularly in EPFL or in UNIL, is like you will be doing research while living with nature in Switzerland. And like for EPFL student, you may get like a nice view of Lake Geneva from your office. For me, I can see a nice view of cloud you can see in the background from my office too. So yeah, it's depends on so yeah, it depends on your like how you make the plan. Like if you really want to utilize your weekends going out like somewhere in the mountains, you need to be very punctual about your work during the week, Monday to Friday, so you finish this and then you go with free mind. So yeah, it's a nice place to make a proper balance between your personal and research life.
So thank you so much. And to summarize what all our panelists said so far, that it's boils down to what you want with your life. It's your own personal choice. You are free to work as much as you want. You are free to work as little as your professional obligation requires you to. So it's how you decide is what you get.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Neelu,
Thank you for
for your
answering the
question.
question.
Does anyone else have any questions? We can take a couple more. Mayank, Shagun.
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions.
Yep.
It's a safe space.
Okay. If you are not comfortable asking it online, you can type it in the chat and then we'll take it up from there. So yeah, it's quite free and don't be shy. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Mayank.
Yeah, hi. So I'm a master's in biotech, and currently, like, I'm pursuing in biocatalysis field, computational. So, like, I have this question always in mind that it's quite difficult if a person is not from a IIT or any esteemed institute to get a PhD out there. Or is there anything particular we should keep in mind while applying for a position?
That's a wonderful question, Mayank. And I can already see that few of our panelists are like jumping to answer this question. So I'll leave it to them. So please.
Maybe I can answer first. So, hi Mayank. So,
hello.
Yeah, so I completed my master's from DY Patil University. It's in Maharashtra in biotechnology. And after that, I was working at IIT Bombay for 3 years, where I had a choice to do PhD there or like somewhere. The reason why I was working there for 3 years was I was looking for a proper position outside for PhD, like everywhere, including US and in Switzerland and Germany. I had offers from Switzerland, Germany, and US, and then I chose to get into EPFL. And of course, I had to give interviews over Skype. Then I was invited here to give a presentation to the school, and then it was a process. I was selected. So it is possible. And there are many other people here as well who are non-IITians or like they are from NIT, ISER, or other universities. So the tip is to you, if you are quite motivated and you are kind of, if you're really into the research and you talk to your professor and you have some structured plans with the professor, it doesn't matter which university, you definitely get a position. I think the professor is the most important person who we need to talk to rather than the school at EPFL.
Okay.
If you are suitable for the project, it's fine.
Okay.
We should be admitted. Yeah.
Naz, I could see you wanted to add your views on this, please.
Yeah, since he has asked this question, and thank you so much for asking these questions. Like most of my friends have the same questions. They often ask me whether an IIT degree really helped to get a PhD abroad or not. So I never studied in any of the IITs. I studied in universities, and then I moved to UK, studied there, and came back, and then worked with IIT. Worked in IIT Kharagpur for several months. So yeah, it's not the case that to get a PhD you must need to have a degree from any of these IITs. It's all about what you can do and how you can help to that particular projects with your skills. That's the key part to get a PhD abroad. And of course, in terms of like references, I guess like professors from the IITs, they are much more experienced and to give good references. So in that case, maybe like PhD professors will help in your application process. But it's not like the case that you need to have have an IIT degree to get a PhD. I can give you my own experience. Like when I studied in UK, I had several friends, like British friends. So towards the end of our degree, when we discussed like what's next, so some of them were like they were also interested to do PhD. So I with curiosity, I asked them, okay, so why do you not want to do your PhD, like in top rated what top 100 or top 10 universities? So they said like, no, not to that university, because even though their rank are like very high, but they don't have the exact lab facilities which I really am looking for. So it's not about the university or your previous degree. It's about what you can do as an individual researcher.
Thank you so much.
I just want to add some small things to this, because generally I also get the same questions, because I also don't come from an IIT sort of an institute. I come from IIIT Delhi, which is also a new institute. What I just wanted to say over here was what in our previous uh, panelists also talked about, like Shakti talked about how you apply to the professor and how do you apply to an application. I just wanted to say something very particular over here is this, that if you are coming not from a recognized, let's say IITs or anything, you have to make sure that you stand out from your resume point of view, from your profile, so that a professor, when he looks into, let's say, 500 application, he sees some quality candidate in your application. And if he sees that, then for sure you're going to get a Skype call. And afterwards it's up to your ability of how do you perform to get to the application. Now over here there are two things which I also wanted to add is this, that so there is two process through which you get into PhD application. One is through school and one is via the project positions or applying to the professors. So if you are coming from a non IIT background, the first process might be a little bit more difficult, like going through the school, because generally the schools have certain set of criteria which are predetermined based on the past alumni experience. So they try to filter you out. So you should try to prefer going into the second option, where trying to apply to the professor in that school program, try to get a advantage by putting your word of mouth to them through the emails, and that's how you will get an advantage of getting into the program. So in technicality, make your motivation letter, make your resume as strong as possible, and that will help you around with anything. So institute doesn't matter really.
Thank you so much, Arvind. And I hope this brief discussion answered your questions, Mayank.
Yeah, it was like very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question. So does anyone else have any question?
I think someone asked in the chat box, if you can see.
Okay, okay, I'll repeat the question then. So in the chat, we have this question from Shagun.
How difficult is it for a graduate student to get into the PhD program at EPFL? So that's the first question. What do the instructors expect from graduate students who are looking to join for PhD? And the third question is, how hard is it, the transition between from graduation to your PhD, getting into a PhD, I think. Shagun here? Yeah.
Yes. Shagun is here. So who would like to take that question?
Mukesh has already answered it aptly. I just wanted to say that he has already the 3 important points.
Okay. So Shagun, if you have any further follow-up questions, or if you would want to seek clarification on any particular point, then feel free to contact our help desk, and Vishwa, who is also there with us on this call today, will be more than happy to answer. And with that, now I would like to invite our President Mukesh to tell everyone a bit more about YUVA and the help desk and everything else before we close this session for the day.
Thanks, Ayush. Yeah, thank you all the participants. People who, I think there were more people who left, but they will see it later. And the future participants who are going to watch it on YouTube and on our live thing. If you are interested in understanding more about the interior matters and anything about EPFL-UNIL, do write to us at yuva@epfl.ch. So YUVA Indians is a non-profit association, like I always say this phrase. we are here for you to. We are here to serve. I was fortunate to become the president on the association last year because it was quite a different year that we could not conduct a lot of in-person events, but mostly it was online. So we are like a cyber bots. Um, but hopefully this year it will be good. So YUVA, we organize a lot of events. This web series is one of such event where we try to motivate people who, there is always some gap in the information. We try to smoothen that up and make it consistent. And you can also visit our website at it's yuva@epfl.ch. The association name is YUVA Indians, and we do a lot of events, and we have further events coming up this year. So yeah, feel free to watch our website. I would like to thank our panelists, everyone, Shakti, Ahmed, Rasul, Naz as well. Pranit is not here, but yeah, I will thank him personally. Thank you very much. And of course, thank you to Ayush for his brainchild, his idea about this whole YUVA web series. So you should drop in a thank to Ayush as well. Arvind is also here, our vice president. Do you want to add anything, Arvind? I'm very terrible at this thing.
No. President is great. He did an excellent job. I just wanted to say that feel free to ping us on Facebook. Like the Facebook page is also there, so you can contact us over there. And already Vishwa has mentioned his email ID on the chat, so you can, the people who are present over here, they can see that. And also, as Mukesh pointed out, it's an organization between EPFL and UNIL. So as I'm from the UNIL, you can see that, and there are a lot of members who are from UNIL. So feel to get in touch with us, ask anything whichever you want, whatever you want to ask, like coming in Switzerland, or knowing about the life in Switzerland, what are the challenges, etc. And also do watch the previous episodes of this series so that you will get even more further idea about where we talk about a lot of things. And do follow us. That's all I would like to say.
So thank you so much, Arvind and Mukesh. And just to end this session, this episode was part of the series of my journey to Switzerland, where in the first episode, we talked about life in Switzerland in general. In second episode, we talked about the master's applications. And in this third episode today, we talked about life of a PhD student. In the next episode, which will be next month, we'll talk about like packing your bags, like what do you need to bring in to get to Switzerland. I mean, more than you, I would encourage you to, I in fact invite you to invite your parents to join the session as well, because most often than not, it's our parents who are more excited and kind of worried before we move on to a completely new country of what to take, what not to take, is it too cold there, and whatnot. So you will get all this information on our social media channels. And to end with, to end this episode, I would like to say a very famous quote, which goes like this: like, share, and subscribe to our channels. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well said, well said.
Well said.